There are moments in history when empires do not fall because of weapons. They fall because one person refuses to become what the war demanded of them. The Kelvar Dominion had conquered 19 systems before humanity learned how to fold space without tearing its own ships apart. Their queens were not merely rulers. They were living command centers, sovereign minds connected through oath, pheromone, memory, and blood to every fleet, every fortress, every blade sworn under their banner. To touch a Kelvar queen without permission was death. To wound one was war. To save one was unthinkable. And yet, on the last night of the Siege of Ardent Reach, when the flagship Ecliptic Mercy burned from bow to spine, when the emergency bulkheads screamed under heat stress, when the dead and dying filled the medbays so thickly that the floor hummed under the weight of failing life support, a human medic named Elias Ward heard someone breathing behind a collapsed pressure door. Not crying, not calling for help. Breathing, slow, controlled, proud. The kind of breathing a person uses when they have decided they will die without begging. Elias had heard that sound before. He had heard it from soldiers with their legs gone. He had heard it from pilots pulled from cockpits with melted gloves fused to their hands. He had heard it from children in colony shelters who were too frightened to scream. He stopped in the corridor with one hand pressed against the wall for balance. The deck beneath his boots bucked as another internal explosion tore through the ship. Somewhere above him, a conduit ruptured, spraying heated coolant into the ventilation line. The air became sharp with metal, smoke, antiseptic foam, and burned insulation. His wrist console chirped. "Ward, where are you?" Commander Juno Reyes snapped through the channel. "Deck 12 is gone. Repeat, Deck 12 is gone. Get to evac spine 3. Elias looked at the pressure door. It was marked in Kelvar script. He did not read Kelvar fluently. He could manage field labels, battlefield warnings, medical alerts, and surrender codes. But this symbol was old, formal, imperial. Behind the door, the breathing continued. "Ward?" Reyes said again. "Answer me." "I found someone," Elias said. A pause, then, colder. "Human or Kelvar?" Elias already knew why she asked. Around them, the war had burned for 11 years. Humanity had lost Ceres Gate, Cantos Orchard, and the first Martian pilgrim fleet. The Kelvar had lost 3 nesting moons, 2 royal dreadnoughts, and their certainty that humans would break when the cost became high enough. No one on either side called it hatred anymore. Hatred was too clean. This was exhaustion with teeth. "Unknown," Elias said. "That is not an answer. It's the only one I have." He dropped to one knee and pressed his scanner to the door seam. The device stuttered, complained about interference, then gave him a partial readout. 1 life sign: severe blood loss, toxic inhalation, internal organ trauma, neural activity unstable. Kelvar biology. Elias closed his eyes for half a second. "Ward," Reyes said carefully, "do not open that door." His hand tightened around the scanner. "Still alive. Listen to me. That compartment is an Imperial section. The only Kelvar on that deck with royal clearance would be Command Caste. I said they're still alive. And I am saying that if you drag Command Caste into our evacuation line, you may get every survivor on this ship killed." Another explosion rolled through the hull. Not close, not far either. The sound moved through the bones before the ears, a deep pressure that made Elias's teeth ache. Behind the door, the breathing changed. A hitch, a small failure of control. That decided him. Elias slung his med pack forward, ripped open the thermal cutter from his belt, and set the beam against the lock housing. Reyes heard the tool ignite. "Ward, I'm a medic. You are a soldier in an active war zone." "No," Elias said, and pushed harder until the lock began to scream. "I'm a medic in a war zone. There's a difference." The cutter burned through the first restraint. Heat shoved back into his face. Sparks bit his gloves. He angled the tool down, found the secondary bolt, and cut again. Reyes swore under her breath. "You open that door, you own the consequence." Elias did not answer. The final bolt gave. The pressure door did not slide. It sagged, half melted into its frame. Elias wedged his shoulder against it and pushed. Pain flared down his arm. He pushed again, boots slipping on fire-suppressant foam. The door shifted just enough for stale heat to breathe through the gap. The smell hit him first. Blood, but not human blood. Kelvar blood had a copper-sour scent, cut with something almost floral when exposed to air. He had learned that in triage tents, trying to keep enemy prisoners alive while men outside shouted that he was wasting plasma on monsters. Inside, a voice spoke. Not loud, not afraid. Leave. Elias paused. The translator on his collar crackled, corrected itself, and repeated in a softer register. Leave me. He squeezed through the gap. The compartment was failing. The atmosphere regulator clicked uselessly. The emergency lamps popped one by one behind the smoke. Heat pressed down like a hand over the mouth. Somewhere close, fluid dripped steadily onto hot metal and hissed. Elias coughed, pulled his respirator tighter, and followed the sound of breathing. Medical, he called. I'm medical. A wet laugh answered him. Human. Unfortunately, then obey. Not really our brand. He reached her by touch more than sight. His glove found fabric unlike anything issued on human ships, stiff with heat and soaked through with blood. Then his fingers found the wound. Bad. Deep puncture under the lower thoracic plate. Secondary lacerations, respiratory compromise, elevated toxin load from smoke inhalation, pulse erratic, fast fading. His scanner finally stabilized enough to display identity markers. The glyph froze his breath. Sera'Veyra of the 9th broodline, Queen of the Kelvar Dominion, supreme voice of the ardent fleets. The enemy, not an officer, not command caste. The enemy. Every death notice Elias had signed in the last 11 years seemed to breathe with her in that ruined compartment. Every colony child wrapped in silver emergency cloth. Every soldier who had asked him if Earth had survived. Every pilot whose last words had been a name no one else on the ship recognized. Queen Sera'Veyra shifted, and the effort dragged a sound from her that she clearly hated herself for making. Now you know, she whispered. Elias said nothing. You may finish it, she said. His jaw tightened. I'm not here to finish anything. Then you are a fool. Been called worse by people with fewer holes in them. Her breathing trembled. Do not touch me. I already am. You insult a sovereign body. You're bleeding through it. You will be executed. Probably not today. He reached for a coagulant patch, then stopped. Kelvar tissue rejected standard human clotting foam. He needed the xenobiotic kit. Bottom of the pack, left side, orange seal. He had packed it himself because no one else bothered to refill enemy-compatible supplies anymore. His fingers found the injector. You carry Kelvar medicine, she said. I carry medicine. For enemies. For patients. The compartment shuddered. Metal groaned above them. A support strut failed somewhere with a thunderclap, and the floor dipped beneath Elias's knees. His wrist console barked again. Ward, the ship is entering cascade failure. You have 4 minutes to reach evac spine 3. Elias pressed the injector to the Queen's side. This will hurt. She gave another breathless laugh. Human mercy always begins with pain? No, just the effective kind. He fired the dose. Her body locked. Her hand clamped around his wrist with impossible strength. The translator did not catch the word she spat, but Elias assumed it was ancient, royal, and extremely rude. Good, he said. If you can insult me, you can survive transport. I will not be transported by you. Then crawl. Silence. Another cough. Then barely. I cannot. There it was. Not surrender. Never that. But truth. Elias pulled a compression wrap from his pack and worked fast. His hands moved from training, from repetition, from the cold discipline of too many impossible corridors. Stabilize bleeding, protect airway, prevent shock, move before fire, vacuum, or stupidity kills the patient. The Queen's breath rasped under his hands. Why? She asked. He tightened the wrap. Because you're alive. No. Why does that matter to you? Elias paused just long enough for the answer to hurt. Because the day it stops mattering, I stop being human. For a moment, The only sound was the wounded ship dying around them. Then Sera'Veyra whispered, "Humans say such things before killing. Some do. And you?" "I say them before carrying." He got one arm behind her shoulders and one beneath her weight. Kelvar anatomy was wrong for human leverage, all dense muscle and rigid support structures under the skin. His own ribs screamed as he lifted. His left leg nearly gave. He bit down hard enough to taste blood. The Queen made a sound halfway between rage and agony. "Do not drop me. I wasn't planning to. If you do, I will haunt your bloodline." Motivating, he staggered toward the door. The corridor outside was worse. Heat rolled from the left. The evacuation route to Spine 3 was half blocked by collapsed plating. Fire suppression foam spat uselessly from a ruptured nozzle. The ship's alarms had blended into one continuous wail. Elias shifted the Queen's weight and started moving. Every step hurt, every breath scraped. Behind him, in the ruined Imperial compartment, something exploded inward, and the pressure wave threw him against the corridor wall. He turned his body before impact, taking the worst of it against his own shoulder so she would not strike the metal. Pain flashed white behind his eyes. The Queen's voice came thinly at his collar. "You shielded me. Noticed that, did you? That was tactically irrational. Get used to it. You are damaged. Also noticed that." "No, I mean as a species." Elias laughed once, short and cracked. "Your Majesty, we have therapists for that." "Ward!" Reyes shouted through comms. "I have your biomarker. You are moving too slow." "Carrying a patient. You are carrying a war." "I'm carrying a person." Reyes went silent. Then 3 minutes. The Queen's grip tightened weakly around the strap of his armor. "You will be punished by your command. Maybe. And if I live, my empire will not thank you." "I didn't ask them to." "Then what do you ask?" Elias reached the collapsed plating. The gap under it was too low. He could crawl alone, not with her. He turned, scanned the wall, found a maintenance hatch, and kicked it. Once, twice, the hatch bent inward. "I ask you to keep breathing." "That is not a bargain." "No," he said, "that's the work." He forced the hatch open and pulled her into the maintenance artery. It was narrow, hot, and filled with the bitter stink of cooked wiring. The duct vibrated with the ship's failing engines. He could hear the reactor containment cycling too fast, a pulsing throb deep in the structure like a giant heart trying to outrun death. He dragged her through the duct by inches. The Queen tried not to cry out. Sometimes she failed. Each time, Elias said something ordinary, something human, something stupid enough to keep the universe from becoming only fire and pain. "Almost there. Bad vacation spot. Remind me to complain to management." "You are speaking nonsense," she gasped. "Yeah, helps." "It does not. It helps me." Another inch. Another. His palms burned inside his gloves. His shoulder throbbed where the blast had thrown him into the wall. The Queen's breathing kept fading and returning, like a signal through interference. After what felt like a lifetime, the duct opened near Evac Spine 3. Voices hit him at once. Human voices. Fear. Orders. Crying. Prayer. The mechanical clank of stretchers locking into launch rails. The hiss of oxygen masks. The deep repeated announcement of the evacuation system counting down. Elias fell out of the hatch with the Queen in his arms. For half a second, the entire evac bay went silent. Then weapons rose. Not slowly, not uncertainly. Every Marine in the bay aimed at the being in Elias's arms. Reyes stood at the ramp of the last evacuation shuttle, face hard with the kind of fear commanders are not allowed to show. "Put her down," she said. Elias stayed on his knees, breathing hard. "No, that is Queen Sera'Veyra. I know. She ordered the bombardment of Countess Orchard. I know. She signed the execution codes for the Titan prisoners. I know. She is responsible for half the names on our memorial wall. I know." His shout cracked through the bay. The Queen stirred weakly. Every rifle tightened. Elias lowered his voice. "And right now she is my patient." Reyes came down the ramp one step. "Elias, Move away from her. He heard the personal note in her voice. Not rank, not command. His name. They had served together since the Lyra evacuations. Reyes had carried him out of a ruptured triage tent after a Kelvar mortar strike. He had restarted her heart twice on Vesta Station. Between them stood years of loss, trust, and all the dead they had failed to save. "Juno," he said. "I can keep her alive. That may be the problem." A young Marine near the bulkhead spoke through clenched teeth. "My brother died at Kantos." Elias looked at him. "So did my sister." The bay went quiet again. That truth had lived inside Elias like a sealed room. People knew he had family on Kantos Orchard. They knew there had been civilian casualties. They did not know enough to ask more. His sister Mara had been a teacher. She had sent him one message before the sky opened. "Eli, if anything happens, don't let it make you cruel." He had hated her for that sentence. Some days he still did. The Queen's breath hitched. Elias felt it through his arms. "Her lung is collapsing," he said. "If I don't decompress it now, she dies." "No one here is going to mourn," the Marine said. Elias looked down at Sera'Veyra. "No," he said softly, "but we will become the kind of people who let someone die while we watched." The Marine's rifle trembled. Reyes closed her eyes for 1 second. Then she said, 2 minutes to launch." Elias took that as permission because he needed it to be permission. "Make space." Nobody moved. Reyes turned. "Make space." The evac bay obeyed, not because they agreed, because she had commanded it. Elias laid the Queen on a stretcher. The medical clamps rejected her anatomy, so he tore them loose and used manual restraints. He found the decompression needle, measured the site by touch, and spoke near her ear. "Your Majesty, stay with me." Her reply was a whisper. "Do not command me. Then consider it a rude suggestion." He drove the needle in. Air hissed out with a wet, ugly sound. Sera'Veyra arched, and the stretcher frame groaned. The Marine with the dead brother stepped forward before anyone else could. He grabbed the stretcher edge and held it down. Elias did not look at him. "Thank you," he said. The Marine said nothing. The Queen's breathing eased. Not enough, but enough for 1 more minute. They loaded her onto the shuttle. No one wanted to sit near her. Elias stayed beside her, one hand pressed over the wound, the other balancing an oxygen converter against her airway. The shuttle sealed with a hard metallic cough. Launch clamps released. Gravity lurched. The ecliptic Mercy fell away behind them, dying in pulses they could feel through the shuttle hull. No one cheered when they cleared the blast radius. No one spoke when the flagship finally broke apart. The shockwave caught them anyway. For several seconds the shuttle tumbled. Loose equipment slammed against walls. Someone screamed. The Queen's pulse vanished from the scanner. Elias braced his knees against the stretcher and started compressions adapted for Kelvar physiology. "Come on," he said. The scanner gave nothing. "Come on." Reyes shouted orders to the pilot. The shuttle groaned. "Do not do this," Elias said, pressing hard, counting under his breath. "Do not make me carry you all that way just so you can die on the floor of a human shuttle." The Queen did not answer. He injected a stimulant. Nothing. Again, nothing. His arms burned. His wound screamed. The scanner remained flat. The Marine with the dead brother whispered, "Let her go." Elias shook his head, not because she was a queen, not because she was valuable, not because saving her might end the war, because Mara's voice lived in him like a splinter. "Don't let it make you cruel." He pressed again. "Breathe." Again. "Breathe." Again. A pulse returned. Weak, defiant. Sera'Veyra dragged air into her lungs with a sound like broken glass. Elias bowed his head, exhausted. The Queen's fingers found his wrist. "Human," she whispered. "Still here. I heard you." "What?" "You're dead." Elias went still. Kelvar queens were rumored to sense memory through touch. Human intelligence had dismissed most of it as imperial myth. Propaganda meant to make the royal caste seem divine. But her fingers remained on his wrist. Light pressure. No strength, only contact. "Your sister," Sera'Veyra whispered. "She asked you not to become cruel." The shuttle seemed to shrink around him. Elias pulled his hand away. "Don't. I did not seek it. I said don't." Her breathing rasped. "I ordered Countess." Every human in the shuttle heard her. The air turned colder than vacuum. The Marine lunged. 2 others grabbed him before he reached the stretcher. "You butchered them," he shouted. "You butchered them." Sera'Veyra did not flinch. Yes, Elias felt something inside him open. Not forgiveness, not even close. Something more dangerous. Truth without anywhere to hide. "Why?" he asked. The Queen was silent long enough that he thought she had lost consciousness. Then she said, "Because I believed humans would surrender after one garden world burned. Because my generals told me your species understood grief as weakness. Because I chose strategy over mercy." Her fingers curled against the stretcher. "I was wrong." The Marine struggled against the hands holding him. "My brother was 17. Sera'Veyra's voice became almost too quiet to hear. "Then his blood is on my command." "Say his name." The Marine spat. Reyes warned. "Corporal." "No," Elias said. He did not know why he said it until the shuttle had gone quiet. The Marine's breath shook. "Darren Voss," he said. His name was Darren Voss. The Queen repeated it, not perfectly. Her translator caught the shape and smoothed it into human sound. Darren Voss. The Marine broke, not loudly, not dramatically. He simply folded inward, shaking so hard the armor on his chest clicked against itself. Sera'Veyra closed her eyes. "I will carry it," she whispered. The Marine laughed through grief. "You don't get to carry him. You don't deserve that." "No," she said. "I do not." No one knew what to do with that. Not Elias, not Reyes, not the soldiers who had spent 11 years turning the Kelvar Queen into something too monstrous to speak honestly. The shuttle reached the human carrier Resolute Dawn 43 minutes later. By then, the war had already changed. Not ended, changed. Because the moment Sera'Veyra's survival signature reached open space, every Kelvar fleet in the Ardent system received the same impossible signal. Their queen was alive. Their queen was aboard a human vessel, and human medical codes were the only thing keeping her that way. Within 6 minutes, the Kelvar dreadnought Valkyreth ceased fire. Within 9, the siege moons powered down their lances. Within 12, the Ardent front, the bloodiest front in known space, became silent for the first time in 11 years. But silence is not peace. Silence is only the universe holding its breath. The Resolute Dawn was not built to carry royalty, and it was certainly not built to carry the most hated being in human space. Its corridors smelled of lubricant, recycled breath, old coffee, disinfectant, and fear. Its walls hummed with the restless vibration of a carrier still ready to fight. Sera'Veyra was taken to isolation med by 6 under guard. 6 guards outside, 4 inside. 2 sharpshooters beyond the observation glass. A poison detection unit installed in the air vent. A translation priest from the Kelvar Armada demanded access and was denied. 3 human admirals demanded she be transferred to military intelligence and were denied because Elias stood in front of the medbay door with blood still drying under his nails and said, "Move her and she dies." He did not know whether that was true. It was true enough. For 36 hours, he did not sleep. He rebuilt her lung with biofoam modified from captured Kelvar field kits. He flushed smoke toxins from her blood with a dialysis rhythm that made the machines overheat. He argued with human xenobiologists who wanted samples before stabilization. He argued with Kelvar envoys who insisted that human hands were contaminating royal biology. He argued with Reyes when she told him he was too close to the case. "I'm the only one she trusts," Elias said. Reyes stared at him. "Does she?" "No." Then that sentence was arrogance. He had no answer. Reyes stepped closer, lowering her voice so the guards would not hear. "You saved her on that ship, fine. You made the moral choice, fine. But do not confuse saving a life with understanding one." Elias looked through the glass. Inside the medbay, machines breathed for a queen who had once ordered entire fleets to burn human cities from orbit. "I know what she did," he said. "Do you?" His jaw tightened. "She killed my sister. She ordered an attack that killed your sister. That matters. But it is not the whole shape of this, and if you simplify it because pain feels cleaner that way, you will make bad decisions. Elias gave a humorless laugh. You defending her now? I'm defending you from turning your grief into a religion. That landed harder than he wanted it to. Reyes softened, but only slightly. You have a habit, Elias. You save people so you don't have to decide what you feel about them. He looked away. Cheap shot. Accurate shot. Inside the room, Sera'Veyra's monitor changed rhythm. Elias moved before thinking. Reyes caught his arm. Sleep. 10 minutes. She's crashing. The machine adjusted. It's compensating. He listened. She was right. The rhythm stabilized. For the first time in 36 hours, Elias felt the edge of his own exhaustion. It rose like gravity. His hands shook. His throat hurt from smoke. The blast injury across his shoulder pulsed with each heartbeat. I can't leave, he said. Reyes released his arm. Then sit down before you fall down. He sat. He meant to close his eyes for one breath. When he opened them, Sera'Veyra was awake. Her voice came through the medbay speaker. Thin but clear. Human ward. Elias stood too fast and nearly fell. Reyes caught him with a hand at his elbow and muttered, "Very professional." He keyed the intercom. "Your Majesty, do not call me that. That's new. I am not certain I remain one." Reyes's expression sharpened. Elias stepped closer to the glass. "Your fleet stopped firing when they found out you were alive." "Yes, that sounds queen-like." "No," Sera'Veyra said. "It sounds instinctive." Her breath caught. She waited through the pain with visible discipline in her voice, refusing to let the sentence break. "My empire was built to obey survival. Not wisdom, not justice. Survival. Every broodline teaches that mercy is a luxury of safe species. Every commander learns that hesitation breeds extinction. Every child is told that humans spread by kindness first, then settlement, then law, then hunger." Elias said nothing. Sera'Veyra continued, "I believed it. Then a human whose dead I created carried me through fire." Reyes leaned toward the intercom. "Why are you telling us this?" "Because my admirals are waiting for my first command." Elias felt the room tighten. "And what will it be?" Reyes asked. The Queen's answer came after a long, painful breath. "I do not know." That terrified Elias more than any threat could have. The Kelvar Dominion without certainty was a starship without inertia control. Massive, armed, ancient, and suddenly capable of tearing itself apart. Outside Medbay 6, the galaxy began to gather. Human command arrived first through encrypted channels, then in person. Admiral Hale of the 5th Defensive Fleet came aboard with a legal team, 2 intelligence officers, and the emotional temperature of a loaded weapon. He did not greet Elias. He did not greet Reyes. He stood outside the glass and looked at the Queen, as if looking at an unexploded bomb. "Can she speak?" Hal asked. Elias folded his arms. "She can hear you." "I asked if she can speak." Sera'Veyra answered from inside. "I can speak." Hale's mouth tightened. "Good, then hear this. You are a prisoner of the United Human Systems. You will be tried for crimes against civilian populations, unlawful orbital bombardment, prisoner execution, and biological warfare conducted in the Varelian corridor." The Queen listened without interruption. When Hal finished, she said yes. The Admiral blinked. "Yes, yes. You acknowledge the charges. I acknowledge that your species has cause to bring them." "That is not the same thing." "No." Elias watched Hale struggle with the absence of defiance. People prepare themselves to confront monsters. They do not prepare themselves for monsters who agree that the blood is real. Hale turned to Elias. "You will transfer medical authority to fleet intelligence." "No." The room stilled. Hale looked at him for the first time. "Excuse me?" "No, sir." "You are a lieutenant medic?" "Yes, sir." "I am an admiral." "Also yes, sir." "Then you understand the chain of command." "I understand that medical custody cannot be transferred while the patient is unstable, unless the receiving unit can guarantee continuity of care. Fleet intelligence cannot." Hale's voice went flat. "Careful." Elias felt Reyes beside him, silent but present. He also felt the Queen listening. "I'm being very careful," Elias said. That is why she's alive. Harley stepped close. You may have saved the single most valuable hostage in human history, Lieutenant. Do not mistake that accident for authority. Before Elias could answer, Sera'Veyra spoke. He has authority over my body. Harley turned slowly. The Queen's breathing machine clicked. In Kelvar law, she said, one who pulls a sovereign from death fire holds temporary claim of preservation until the debt is answered. Harley stared at her. I don't care what Kelvar law says. You should. My fleets do. The room went silent in a new way. Sera'Veyra continued, if you remove him and I die, the Dominion will interpret it as execution during debt right. Every broodship in Ardent Reach will open fire. Harley looked at Elias. Elias did not enjoy the look. Is she telling the truth? How would I know? Sera'Veyra said, I am. Reyes added quietly, our signals teams confirm the Kelvar fleets are broadcasting restraint codes tied to the Queen's life sign and one human identifier. Harla's eyes narrowed. One human identifier. Reyes nodded toward Elias. The Admiral's silence was full of math. Bad math, political math, war math. Finally, Hal said, then Lieutenant Ward remains assigned to Medbay 6 until further notice. Elias should have felt relief. He felt trapped. After Halle left, Sera'Veyra asked, was that courage? Elias rubbed a hand over his face. No. Bureaucracy. Human bureaucracy resembles ritual combat. It is. Do you often win? Not usually. Yet you challenged an admiral. You challenged 19 systems. I had fleets. I had a medical regulation. For the first time, Sera'Veyra made a sound that might have been amusement if her lungs had allowed it. Then the amusement faded. Your admiral wants me alive for leverage. Yes, your dead want me dead for justice. Elias did not answer. And you? She asked. There it was again, the question he had been outrunning since the corridor. Elias looked at the machines, at the numbers, at anything that was not the person beneath them. I want my sister back. The honesty surprised them both. Sera'Veyra said nothing. Elias swallowed. I want Cantos Orchard unburned. I want Darren Voss to be 17 and annoying his brother somewhere. I want every soldier I held together with tape and pressure foam to wake up and complain about the food. I want the war to have never learned our names. His voice grew quieter. But none of that is medicine. Sera'Veyra's reply came like a blade wrapped in cloth. No, it is grief. He laughed once, bitterly. You an expert? Yes. That stopped him. The Queen's breath rasped. My first brood was killed in the Neral collapse. Before your war. Before I wore command. Before I knew that grief can become policy if enough people applaud it. Elias leaned against the counter. What happened? An outer colony failed to send tribute. My mother's council delayed relief to make an example of them. The food stores collapsed. The young died first. Her voice became distant, not weaker, but older. I learned then that empires do not need enemies to become cruel. They only need excuses. And then you became queen and made better choices? No, Sera'Veyra said. I became queen and found better excuses. Elias did not know what to say. That was the problem with truth. It did not always open a door. Sometimes it only removed the wall you had been leaning on. Days passed. The galaxy did not resume war, but it did not move toward peace either. The Kelvar fleets remained in formation beyond Ardent Reach. Engines hot, weapons sleeping but not dead. Human fleets held defensive lines, every captain terrified of being the one who blinked first. Diplomats arrived with words polished smooth by fear. Priests, lawyers, generals, and intelligence officers filled the resolute dawn until the carrier felt less like a warship and more like a courtroom drifting through a minefield. At the center of it all lay Sera'Veyra, and beside her, far too often, sat Elias Ward. He told himself it was medical duty. At first, that was mostly true. Kelvar royal biology was dangerously complex. Their immune systems carried ancestral symbiotes that interpreted trauma as invasion. Their blood chemistry shifted according to command stress. Their nervous systems could synchronize with fleet communication frequencies if sedation dropped too low. 3 times, Sera'Veyra nearly died because a distant admiral sent emergency command requests that triggered her neural implants. After the 3rd time, Elias ripped the receiver from the wall. A Kelvar envoy shrieked through the translator that he had desecrated a sacred channel. Elias threw the broken unit at his feet. Send another signal that spikes her brain pressure, and I'll desecrate the rest of it. The envoy drew himself up. You threaten the voice of the Dominion? No, Elias said. I'm threatening the idiot yelling into her skull. Reyes later told him his diplomatic style needed work. Sera'Veyra said nothing until they were alone. Then she whispered, "You defend me from my own empire. I defend my patient from bad medicine. Always medicine. Mostly. What is the rest?" Elias checked the seal on her oxygen line. Annoyance. With them, with everyone, including me, especially you. She accepted that as if it were a formal gift. Slowly, the conversations changed. At first, they were arguments. She asked why humans wasted resources on soldiers who would never return to combat. He told her that usefulness was a terrible measure of worth. She asked why human ships carried memorial walls when they damaged morale. He told her forgetting the dead was not strength, it was cowardice with better posture. She asked why he kept treating enemy prisoners after hostage exchanges failed. He told her wounds did not check passports before bleeding. Then one night cycle, when the ship was quiet except for ventilation and distant engine thrum. She asked about Mara. Elias nearly left. His hand froze above the medication tray. No, I overstep. Yes, a pause. I apologize. That word, from her, felt heavier than it should have. Elias checked the dosage twice, even though he already knew it was correct. She was a teacher, he said. He did not know why. Maybe exhaustion. Maybe the room had become too small for silence. She taught pre-jump history to colony kids. She used to say children should know Earth was not a myth, just because they were born under another sun. Sera'Veyra listened, not as a queen, not as an interrogator, as someone who had no right to the story and knew it. She hated military uniforms, Elias said. Said they made people too certain. She said certainty was where mercy went to die. Sera'Veyra's breathing altered. Her words survived her. Don't make it poetic. I did not intend to. Everything sounds poetic when you people say it through a translator. Then I will say it plainly. I killed a woman who understood war better than I did. Elias set the injector down. Anger rose fast. Hot, familiar, almost welcome. You don't get to use her to improve yourself. No, you don't get to make her death part of your redemption. No, you don't get redemption because you feel bad after losing. Sera'Veyra's voice remained steady, and that almost made it worse. No. Then what do you want from me? Nothing. Liar. Silence. Then softer. I want to know the names. Elias stared at her. What? The dead I made into numbers. I want to know names. He laughed without humor. You think that helps? No. Then why? Because it hurts. The ship hummed around them. Elias wanted to hate that answer. He could not. So he gave her one name, Mara Ward. The next day, Corporal Voss came to Medbay 6. He stood outside the glass for 17 minutes before Elias opened the door. You don't have to do this, Elias said. Voss's voice was rough. I know. Sera'Veyra was awake. The corporal did not salute, did not bow, did not speak like a soldier. He spoke like a brother. Darren used to steal my boots, he said, not because he needed them, because he knew I hated cold floors. He'd hide them in the ceiling panels and laugh when I had to hop around the barracks. The Queen listened. He wanted to be a pilot. He was bad at math but too stubborn to admit it. He wrote letters to our mother and pretended I was behaving myself so she wouldn't worry. He died on his second deployment because you wanted to teach us fear. Sera'Veyra's reply was quiet. Yes. Voss pressed both hands against the edge of the counter. I came here to see if I could kill you. Elias tensed. Sera'Veyra said, can you? The corporal's breath shook. No. Why? Because Ward saved you? That answer surprised Elias. Voss looked at him with something like resentment. Don't look grateful. I'm not doing it for you. I wasn't, Elias said. You were. Maybe a little. Voss turned back to the Queen. I don't forgive you. I did not ask. Good, because if you ask, I'll hate you more. I understand. No, you don't. Sera'Veyra's voice was barely more than air. No, I do not. But I will remember his name. Voss left without another word. After he was gone, Elias adjusted the Queen's pain regulator. She asked, was that mercy? No, Elias said. That was restraint. Is there a difference? Yes, teach me. He looked at her. It was the first time she had said those words without command hidden inside them. Teach me. The Queen of the Kelvar Dominion, whose fleets had silenced moons, whose laws were older than human starflight, asking a battlefield medic to explain the fragile architecture of not becoming worse. Elias sat. Mercy is what you give someone when you have power over them and choose not to use all of it. And restraint. Restraint is when you want to use it and don't. Which is greater? Depends how angry you are. She considered that. Then Corporal Voss has strength. Yes, greater than mine. Elias did not soften it. In that moment, yes. Sera'Veyra absorbed the answer. Then she said, my empire would call that weakness. Your empire is wrong about a lot. Yes, she whispered. I am beginning to suspect that. The assassination attempt came on the 9th day, not from humans, from Kelvar loyalists. That shocked human command more than it shocked Elias. He had spent too many hours listening to Sera'Veyra describe Dominion politics to believe survival made anyone safe. A queen who questioned conquest was more dangerous to an empire than an enemy fleet. The assassin came through the maintenance system during ship night, carrying a nerve spike coded to royal biology. The ship's sensors missed them because Kelvar infiltration shells did not register as life until they unfolded. Elias was half asleep in the chair beside the Queen's bed when the air changed. Not sound, not movement, smell. A cold, mineral scent beneath the disinfectant. He opened his eyes. The assassin spoke in Kelvar before the translator caught up. Forgive me, Sovereign. Sera'Veyra woke instantly. No. The assassin moved. Elias did not think. He threw himself between the spike and the bed. The weapon entered below his ribs. There was no dramatic pain at first, only pressure, then ice. Then every nerve in his body seemed to receive a different command. He hit the floor hard enough to knock the breath from his lungs. The medbay erupted. Alarms, boots, shouting, the heavy crack of stun fire, the assassin collapsing, Reyes yelling his name through the door. Elias tried to breathe. His lungs refused. The Queen's voice cut through everything. Elias, not human ward, not medic. Elias. He heard restraint snap. He heard medical lines tear loose. He heard guards shouting for her to stay down. Then her hand found his. Skin too hot from fever. Grip weak but absolute. Stay, she commanded. He would have laughed if his body remembered how. Bad habit, he tried to say. It came out as air. Sera'Veyra spoke in rapid Kelvar, and the translator lagged behind, fragmented. Royal blood authorization, open debt channel, transfer antitoxin pattern. Now, Reyes burst in. What happened? Spike toxin, one medic shouted. Unknown compound. Sera'Veyra's voice turned lethal. Not unknown, mine. Everyone froze. The Queen dragged herself upright, despite the alarms shrieking from her own monitors. It is broodline-specific execution venom, designed to kill those close enough to touch a sovereign. Reyes looked at Elias, convulsing on the floor. Can you stop it? Yes. Then do it. There is a cost. I did not ask for the price. Sera'Veyra looked down at Elias. He could barely hear now. The world had narrowed to the terrible labor of failing breath. The Queen said, to countermand the venom, I must open my royal immune memory. My fleet will receive everything. Pain, vulnerability, truth. Reyes snapped. I don't care if your fleet receives your childhood diary. Save him. Sera'Veyra's answer was not for Reyes. It was for Elias. You carried me through fire. I will not leave you on the floor. Then the room changed. Not visually. Elias had no sight for it. But pressure shifted in his ears. The ship's communication grid began to hum at frequencies too deep to hear cleanly. The air tasted charged, metallic, alive. Across the Ardent system, every Kelvar ship received the Queen, not her command voice. Her pain, her fear, her memory. They felt the human medic cutting through the door. They felt heat crushing breath from a dying corridor. They felt his arms break with effort as he carried their sovereign away from death. They felt his grief when she touched Mara's name inside him. They felt the moment he chose, again and again, not to hate enough to let her die. And then they felt the assassin's venom in his blood. For the first time in Dominion history, an empire experienced a human act of mercy from the inside, not as propaganda, not as weakness, as cost. Sera'Veyra pressed her palm to Elias's wound and released the antitoxin pattern. The pain returned all at once, which meant he was alive. He screamed. He hated that he screamed. Then he breathed. The first breath tore through him like broken metal. The second came easier. The third carried his own voice back. "Your Majesty," he rasped. Her hand trembled against his. "Do not call me that." "Fine," he whispered. "Sera." The medbay went utterly silent. Somewhere, a human officer made a strangled sound. The Queen lowered her head, not in weakness, in acceptance. Elias. He passed out before he could answer. When he woke, the war was over. Not officially. Officials always arrive after history has already happened and attempt to stamp paperwork onto the ashes, but the war was over. The Kelvar fleets had withdrawn from firing range. Not retreated, withdrawn. Every dreadnought, carrier, broodship and escort vessel held position with weapons cold and engines lowered to ceremonial idle. The Dominion High Admiralty sent no threats. Instead, they sent a request. The Queen would speak, not to human command, not first, to her empire. Elias woke in a recovery bed with Reyes sitting beside him, reading casualty reports with the ferocious concentration of someone who had not slept and considered that a personal choice. His throat felt like sand. "Did I die?" Reyes did not look up. Briefly, again, twice. Greedy. She closed the report. "You are the only person I know who can turn martyrdom into a scheduling problem." He tried to move. Pain answered with enthusiasm. "Queen? Alive. Assassin? Alive. Unhappy about it. War." Reyes exhaled. "That depends on what happens in 12 minutes. Elias turned his head. "Why 12? "Because Sera'Veyra refused to address the Dominion unless you were awake. That woke him better than adrenaline." "No." "Yes." "I'm not going." "You're in a bed." "Then I'm definitely not going." She said the Empire must hear the human breathe. Elias stared at her. "That is insane." "Yes," Reyes said, "but on brand for this week." They moved him anyway, not far, only to the communication chamber adjacent to Medbay 6, because nobody trusted his blood pressure, Sarah's lungs, or the galaxy in general. He was placed in a medical chair. Sera'Veyra stood beside the primary transmission dais with support braces hidden under layers of stubbornness. Elias could hear the machines assisting her breath. He could hear the faint tremor she refused to show in her voice when she tested the channel. The room was packed with humans and Kelvar. No one was comfortable. That seemed fair. Admiral Haas stood with his arms behind his back. Reyes stood near Elias. Corporal Voss stood at the rear, silent. The Kelvar envoys kept their heads lowered, not in submission, but in fear of what their queen might say. The transmission opened. A tone moved through the chamber, so deep Elias felt it in his sternum. Sera'Veyra spoke first in Kelvar. The translator carried her words into human speech a breath later. "My fleets, my broods, my houses, my oath-bound commanders, hear me without anthem, hear me without victory chant, hear me without the lies we have mistaken for strength." No one moved. "For 11 years I told you humanity was dangerous because it refused to die correctly. We broke its colonies and it carried its wounded. We burned its fields and it planted again. We captured its soldiers and its medics treated ours. We called this weakness because we had no word for courage that did not require conquest. Her breath caught. Elias gripped the arm of his chair. She continued, I ordered Kantos Orchard destroyed. A sound moved through the Kelvar side of the room. Not surprise, fear. I ordered it because I believed terror would shorten war. I ordered it because strategy gave me permission to silence mercy. I ordered it because an empire built on survival taught me that the living justify the dead. Her voice lowered. I was wrong. The chamber's silence became enormous. Across the system, entire fleets listened. I was dying aboard a human ship. A human medic found me. He knew my name. He knew my crimes. He knew his sister died by my command. He carried me anyway. Elias closed his eyes. He did not save a queen. He saved an enemy because she was alive. He did not ask for surrender. He did not ask for tribute. He did not ask for forgiveness. He asked me to breathe. Her voice changed then, not louder, truer. And when one of our own struck him down for preserving me, I opened royal memory. You felt what I felt. You felt the fire. You felt his grief. You felt his mercy. You felt the truth we have hidden from ourselves. A long pause. The human did not kneel. Elias opened his eyes. Sera'Veyra's next words seemed to pass through every deck, every ship, every old wound in the system. So we must. The Kelvar envoys in the room made a sound like breath leaving a cathedral. Sera'Veyra continued, not to humanity as conquerors, not to their admirals, not to their guns. We kneel to the truth that power without mercy is only fear wearing armor. We kneel to the dead whose names we turned into numbers. We kneel to the living we called weak because they refused to become cruel. We kneel because an empire that cannot bow before truth deserves to collapse under its own pride. Admiral Hal whispered, My God. Sera'Veyra drew one more breath. I hereby order all Kelvar fleets to stand down. All human prisoners are to be released under medical escort. All occupied systems are to receive withdrawal timetables within one cycle. All commanders who refuse will be stripped of oath and named enemy to the broodline. Her voice nearly failed, but she forced the final words through. And to the humans of Kantos Orchard, Titan, Ceres Gate, and every world our fear has wounded, I do not ask forgiveness. I submit to judgment. The transmission ended. For a moment, no one believed silence could be real. Then the Kelvar envoys knelt, one by one, not gracefully, not theatrically, heavily, as if their bones had finally learned the weight their empire had been carrying. Across the ardent system, the Dominion followed. On dreadnought command decks, admirals lowered themselves before stunned crews. On broodships, soldiers touched the floor and spoke the names of human dead, transmitted with the Queen's confession. On siege moons, weapons officers wept without understanding why their hands would not return to the controls. The Kelvar Empire knelt, not because humanity defeated them, because one human had refused to let hatred decide who deserved heir. Elias did not feel triumphant. That surprised him. He had imagined, in darker moments, what it would feel like to watch the Dominion break. He thought there would be satisfaction, justice, maybe peace. Instead, he felt tired and sad and impossibly awake. Sera'Veyra turned slightly toward him. Her voice no longer carried through the transmission, only the room. Was that mercy? Elias looked at the kneeling envoys, at Harley's stunned face, at Voss, who was crying silently and did not bother to hide it, at Reyes, whose eyes were wet, but whose jaw remained stubbornly set, as if daring anyone to mention it. No, Elias said. Sarah waited. He swallowed. That was the beginning of it. The trials came later. So did the treaties. So did the arguments about reparations, borders, prisoners, memorial rights, occupied moons, erased colonies, and the impossible arithmetic of grief. Peace did not arrive like sunrise. It arrived like surgery, slow, painful, necessary, and full of scars. Queen Sera'Veyra did not escape judgment. She refused immunity 3 times. She stood before the Interstellar Tribunal at Geneva Station and spoke the names she had learned: Mara Ward, Darren Voss, Ilian Cho, Petra Danes, Samuel Okonkwo, Rena Valles, children, pilots, teachers, prisoners, farmers, people, not numbers, people. Some humans hated her for living, some Kelvar hated her for kneeling. History, being less sentimental than storytellers pretend, did not become clean, but something changed that no treaty could fully explain. Kelvar madeships began answering human distress calls. Human engineers helped stabilize Dominion famine moons. Joint memorial walls were built on worlds where both species had once buried only their own. And in the medical academy on Luna, a new oath was added to the field surgeon's code, the Ward Principle. A patient is not proven worthy by innocence, allegiance, usefulness, or gratitude. A patient is proven present by breath, and breath is enough. Years later, when Elias Ward was asked why he saved her, people expected a grand answer. They wanted him to say he foresaw peace. He did not. They wanted him to say he recognized goodness in her. He had not. They wanted him to say humanity was morally superior. He refused. The truth was smaller, harder, more human. "I heard someone breathing," he said, "and I still knew what that meant." Sera'Veyra lived long enough to rebuild the Dominion into something no longer deserving of that name. She dissolved the royal execution codes, ended broodline punishment, opened the sealed archives of conquest, ordered every Kelvar child to learn not only victory songs, but the names of worlds their ancestors had harmed. At her final address, decades after Ardent Reach, she did not speak from a throne, she spoke from a hospital bed, with old machines breathing softly beside her, and an older human medic sitting nearby pretending not to worry. "My empire once believed humans were dangerous because they would not kneel," she said. Then she took Elias's hand. "We were wrong. Humans were dangerous because they knew when not to. And they were holy because they knew when to bend down, lift an enemy from the fire, and carry them home." After she died, no monument was built by her order. She had forbidden it. Instead, on Ardent Reach, where the ecliptic Mercy had burned and the last evacuation shuttle had escaped the dying flagship, a small medical beacon was placed in orbit. It transmitted on every emergency frequency known to both species. Not a command, not a warning, not a claim of victory, only a message. "If you are alive, call out. Someone will come." And beneath that, in both human and Kelvar script, were the words that ended a war. "Keep breathing." That is the work.